Government officials nationwide are clamping down on protests by issuing curfews, and more than half of those curfews make exceptions for the media. But just who are the media, and why should you care? Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson shows you why police departments in Milwaukee County are trying to define the media and what that could mean for citizen journalists and live streamers who have captured some of 2020's most important moments.
When Wauwatosa police arrested Tracy Cole in the middle of last month's civil unrest,
that's a very significant news event.
Richie McGinnis was right there to record it. Tracy is the mother of Alvin Cole. He's one of 3 people shot to death by Wauwatosa police officer Joseph Mensah the past 5 years.
I have press credentials. Yes, sir, I have press credentials right here.
McGinnis is a reporter for the Daily Caller.
Get out! Hey, he's pressed. Yes, sir, I have my credentials right here. Yes, sir, yes, sir.
But it seems his journalistic credentials did little.
He says, "Don't let me catch you."
Don't let me catch you!
I'm out.
To stop officers from chasing him down.
I have press, I have credentials. Yes, sir.
Taking him to the ground.
Yes, sir.
And detaining him.
They were beating my knees with a nightstick or a billy club or whatever you want to call it.
On October 7th, Wauwatosa issued an emergency curfew to quell the unrest that followed the DA's decision not to charge Officer Mensah in Cole's death.
Quick, let's go.
Yes, sir.
On the second night of unrest, McGinnis was one of 4 journalists detained by police for violating curfew, even though the mayor's emergency order made a specific exception for credentialed members of the press.
The beating that I withstood was, I don't think it was okay.
Police eventually released McGinnis and one of his co-workers without a citation, but 2 others were fined $1,300, including Blair Nelson.
I'm new to covering protesting.
He's a student journalist from Illinois who came to the Tosa protests with a cell phone and no credentials.
It's a lot easier for someone like me, with a cell phone to get good footage of what's happening on the ground versus the local news.
Our primary objective, as always, is to keep everyone safe.
Wauwatosa Police Chief Barry Weber declined our request for an interview, but since those arrests, he and other police chiefs in Milwaukee County have been trying to determine who should be allowed to cover protests after curfew and who should not.
If you're going to argue that there should be some kind of media dead zone after a curfew and just let the cops go do whatever they want to the people who might still be out on the streets, I think that's a very, very bad recipe. And I think it's, to be quite frank, it's un-American.
It's a question facing police departments across the country.
What does media mean?
That's a tough question.
That's a big question.
I think it's going to be very difficult to define that in any real sense.
It is a total slippery slope.
Annie Schwartz is a former news reporter and former public information officer for Milwaukee Police.
How do I know who the media are if I'm going to exempt them?
Schwartz is working with police to craft a definition of media.
This is a balancing act that law enforcement is struggling with.
This month, South Milwaukee Police Chief William Jessup plans to submit a draft definition to an advisory board of local chiefs.
We don't want to arrest news media, but there are times when, in the middle of a chaotic situation, we don't know who are the violent protesters and who are the peaceful protesters and who are the news media.
They want to draw the line somewhere, but it's very difficult to draw that line.
Melissa Wasser is a policy analyst with the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, which is tracking curfew orders nationwide. According to their data, more than half of those orders include a media exemption, but not a single one defines who the media are.
It may very well be that that person that opens up their phone on Facebook Live is engaged in legitimate news gathering.
To be constitutionally compliant, we almost have to allow individuals to record anything they want to record.
Wauwatosa criminal defense attorney Tony Cotton says citizen journalism has become especially important in 2020 as everyday people armed with smartphones capture crucial evidence or stream historic moments to thousands of followers.
Calm down.
Frank Nitti can go on Facebook, run a live stream. He's going to get more readers or followers than the Waukesha Freeman is going to get.
Which begs the question, is Frank Nitti a journalist?
I think certainly he could claim that he's a journalist.
Is he a protester? Is he a journalist?
The definition Wauwatosa police say they are working with right now would limit media to those who work for TV and radio stations, written publications, and .coms with a legitimate business license.
I'm a little concerned that it doesn't include freelance reporters.
A lot of big names who cover these protests are not members of any LLCs or any registered organizations. They're freelance. They're on their own.
That's exactly how I started. I was just a guy with a cell phone.
But CJ Halliburton gets where police are going.
So it is tough, and I think they've got a tough job.
6 months ago, he was a janitor in Seattle.
I don't even know what town we're in right now.
Today, he's a full-time live streamer. And he was in the thick of the chaos in Kenosha the night Kyle Rittenhouse allegedly shot 2 protesters to death and seriously wounded a third.
At one point, I had 85,000 people live on my feed.
CJ now has his own YouTube channel and business license. So under Tosa's working definition, he would likely qualify as media. And he believes police need to know the difference between journalists and agitators.
You can't throw a rock at a building while you're holding your phone and say, I'm press and media.
I think it's important that, these municipalities recognize our constitutional rights.
McGinnis likes the idea of a clear definition too.
Don't let me catch you!
As long as police adhere to it.
I've been shot with rubber bullets, pepper balls. I've been pepper sprayed multiple times this summer.
We're still seeing them get arrested, and it's absolutely troubling.
In the end, it may not be up to police or journalists to decide where to draw the line.
That'll be for circuit court judges to decide.
This hasn't been tested in the courts yet.
Nobody wants to be the case study.
Until then, anyone acting as your eyes and ears after curfew may need to keep credentials in plain sight.
I have credentials. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And a lawyer on speed dial. Andy Schwartz tells me that police chiefs in Milwaukee County and right here in Wauwatosa are considering the idea of a credentialing system to help identify reporters in protest zones. But many of the journalists I've spoken to say that credentials and logos make them targets, so they prefer to blend in. That means they may have to choose between being targeted by police who think they're protesters or protesters who don't like the press. In Wauwatosa, Brian Polson, Fox 6 Investigators.
Brian, thank you. On Friday, the Los Angeles Police Department sent a memo to all officers saying they will not require media to show credentials when covering protests and demonstrations. In fact, the LAPD says it will recognize those who self-identify as media, even if they cannot produce any identification.
It's an election